All right, so I'm Steve Garisher, and I'm going to talk about some plants that people have submitted electronically for the Plant Forum. And first up, this is our host tonight, Laura Bauer, has submitted the first two. This is Orbea Samoda, one of the starfish flowers. This is from Southern Africa. Orbeas are closely related to the Stapelias, and also the next one, which is a Hernia, that's also related to the Stapelias. They're all called starfish flower variously, or carrion flowers. Some of them smell, some of them don't. They're all incredibly intriguing in detail in these flowers, and they're all in the family Apocynaceae. And generally, pretty much as a rule, most of them like to grow fairly dry. I've personally found that the Stapelias they're the ones you see the most often because they're the easiest to grow, and people give away cuttings all the time. You'll probably, you get handed them instead of finding them at sales and things. This one, the Orbea, and the next one, the Hernia, they truly require excellent drainage. It is extremely easy to overwater and rot these things if you water them at the wrong time. In my experience, you almost need to let these guys, the succulent stems, shrivel just a bit. One of the really cool things about this is Laura posted it I saw it actually on Facebook, and I think she put it on Instagram as well. The little hairs around the sides of this they sway in the lightest breeze, so it sort of shimmies. It's really wonderful. These little tiny hairs just are in constant movement, so it's really quite a beautiful thing. She got this at the Huntington plant sale and said it took 2 years to bloom. So again, most of they're fly pollinated. Some are pollinated by carrion beetles as well, I think, so they can smell variously, like rotting flesh, or some of them smell like, well, they smell bad, let's just put it that way. So they do attract flies quite often, and occasionally with some of the larger Stapelias, if you want to get a photograph of them, you almost have to wave the flies away from the flowers when they first open if you want the picture without flies in it. So the next one, again, I mentioned it's another relative, is a Hernia quinta, I guess is how it's pronounced. And this is interesting because most of the starfish flowers are very heavily marked. They look like almost like paisley printed fabric. They have tiny checkerboards or chevrons or dots or anything. They have these incredible patterns that are really, you want to look at these things up close. You just don't want to smell most of them. But this is quite, I want to say plain, and that's a horrible word to use for it. It's really beautiful. I want one of these. But it's unmarked, let's put it that way, except for the very throat inside there. This is really quite nice. Again, needs excellent drainage, and she says to keep this mostly dry. I've had a few Hernia species and ended up watering them at just the wrong time, and I rotted every single one of them. And unlike Stapelias, if you do rot these, it's hard to get a piece where it doesn't keep creeping in, where the rot doesn't keep moving into that piece of what looks like perfectly good cutting. It seems to just keep going once it starts. So at least with mine, I lost them entirely. Carol Bornstein sent this in. This is Lyonothamnus floribundus aspleniifolius. This is the Santa Cruz Island Ironwood, and this is in Rosaceae. It's related distantly to roses. You can see that when you see the flowers up close. These are beautiful trees. They tend to grow, at least out on, when I saw the stands out on Santa Cruz, they seem to They grow in like clefts and canyons and drainage areas, so that they actually have I think they tap into deep moisture. So they do like their moisture, but they have to search for it, and they tend to grow where they can, that taproot can get down to deep moisture in clefts in canyons and places like that. So they don't grow out in open, dry areas, or if they look like they are, you will find that the geology there is probably fairly interesting. These trees are a wonderful excuse to not clean up under a plant. Everything that falls from them is beautiful. The fallen foliage is exquisite. The fallen bark is beautiful. Everything that shreds off the tree is absolutely beautiful on the ground, all of its own self-mulching. The one thing they do that some people find objectionable is that those flower clusters, you can see they start out white, they turn this kind of buff color, and then they turn a dark brown. They hang on to the tree. They can be there for absolute years, actually. They don't really fall off that easy. If you want a cleaner looking tree, you've got to get up and take those off of there, but that's really up to the gardener, I think. I would leave them for the birds. And whatever else would use the seeds. But it's quite a nice tree. It fills in, as she states there. It's up to 50 feet tall. You don't, in most gardens, you won't see them quite so large, but that may be more age related than anything else, than growing conditions. I'm growing this even in my own garden, and I have heavy clay soil, so I just don't water it. I try and, in the first few years, I did water it, and now I pretty much leave it alone, and I water things near it, and it's probably benefiting from that, but I don't put any water directly within the drip line of the tree itself. This used to be Eriophyllum nevinii, and it's now Constancea nevinii. And it's Catalina Silver-lace or island snowflake. And Carol actually says the cultivar Canyon Silver has particularly divided leaves. That's the one I've used in plantings. And it does, the divisions in the leaves seem to be deeper and a little bit more, they almost look, it's more like flattened and rounded on the tips. So it's quite striking, particularly if it can spill over a hard surface like a wall, or like a brick planter or something like that. They look really quite beautiful. They have the classic, this is, it's Asteraceae. So these are tiny little ray flowers in clusters. So great for pollinators. And this plant, I've grown this even out in the San Fernando Valley in gardens that I've done out there, and it does require a little bit more watering when you get deeper into the valleys, and you have to be careful with that you're not watering it at the wrong time. But the closer you get to the coast, the less demanding it is for any kind of summer moisture. And you can, at least where I've grown this, I've cut it back. I'd never cut it back super hard. I'm not sure if you can. I would actually have to ask about that, but I've cut it back some, and it does seem to bounce back quite nicely. It's also great for contrasting color in borders. This almost whitish silver color really stands out beautifully against other foliage. It's really quite striking. April Curtis sent this in. This is Mascagnia macroptera, excuse me. One of the butterfly vine. There's a number of flowering vines that have this same structure, but they're different from each other. There's another one called an orchid vine that has the same flower structure, but they're completely different plant families, I'm pretty sure. This is in Malpighiaceae. Oh, I think, no, I probably messed that up. I can't read my own writing currently. They bloom for quite a long time once they go into bloom. This is from Baja. April said that this was grown from a cutting, and she's not sure where this is for sale. The Huntington used to sell this at their plant sales. I don't know if they do anymore. But once it gets going, it seems to pretty much shrug off the heat quite easily. It does, at least where I've seen it growing, it seems to be happier with not constant watering, more regular watering, but is still pretty tough. So it can go for periods without. It just tends to get a little shyer in blooming. And I've actually never grown it myself, and I don't know what what you do consistently to care for this. I would probably want to ask April about that, about any cutting back or heading back on this, how aggressive it is. April also sent this in. This is Rhodophiala bifida. This is one of the Amaryllis relatives, Amarillo Daisy, and it's from South America. And it's one of those that blooms on bare stems. So the foliage dies down and then these stems pop up. And the nice thing about this is these blooms are incredible. From a fairly small bulb, it makes a big impact. And you can actually crowd the bulbs fairly close together. So if you do kind of populate an area with these things, you can make quite a statement. One of the things I would warn about is, again, this requires some fairly good drainage. I wouldn't put it on any heavy soils. I think you might lose it. I will lose it if I put it out in my soil. My soil's heavy clay. So this used to be Michelia Champaca. It's now Magnolia Chumpaka. And this is a tree from South Asia. This is prized for its fragrance. These flowers start a yellowish white, and then the yellow darkens as it ages. And the fragrance from these flowers it's quite powerful. A single blossom actually is almost too much in a closed room. It's that strong. It's a pleasant fragrance. At least I find it pleasant. Unlike some of the jasmines, for me, they're a little overpowering. This is it's, as I say, a pleasant fragrance, but it's very strong. There's another interesting one that's related to this, Michelia figo, or I guess that might, if that's been changed to Magnolia, and that one smells of ripe bananas. It's more of a shrub. So these are tender. They will, if they get burned in a quick freeze, they will come back from that. But if it's a hard enough freeze, it will kill branches, and so you will end up being lopsided and looking really rather sad. It may still grow, but it's not going to be the shape of these it's very conical almost, and if it does get frosted heavily enough, you lose that conical shape to the tree. And last one we have is Justicia Carnea, and this is the yellow form of what's normally seen as a light or dark pink flower. And the Justicias, they're fairly easy to grow. Hers, April says this was grown from a cutting. I know back when I worked at Hortus, Gary Hammer used to sell this plant quite a bit. We would bring it in all the time. I've since lost all of mine. I don't have any anymore. So I haven't seen this for sale in quite a long time. It's a nice plant. The pink ones are the ones you're going to find much more often. It will grow in sun to part shade. If you are in a hot area, it's going to want more shade than sun. Morning sun or very late afternoon sun would be good. And they're fairly tough. And if they do droop a little bit from the heat, they will actually pop back up with watering at some point. That don't think if they fold up a little bit, don't think they're gone. And they do tend to bloom nicely this time of year. You can cut these back hard. And I think that's all of our plants for tonight.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve.
And let me stop sharing here.
We had one correction from the person who sent in the Justicea. She says that should be Justicea aurea. Do you know if aurea is a sub species?
It is. It's not as it's. I actually should look that up if it. No, it's actually listed as Justicea aurea. That's correct.
Okay. So we'll go back and correct